Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, so we can go ahead and get started.
And actually, Councillor Gandara is just coming in.
I'm sorry? Oh, there she is. Awesome.
Councillor Gandara, the meeting has started.
Okay, thank you. Where are we at on the agenda, or?
We just got started.
Oh, okay, cool. So am I facilitating? What part of the agenda are we at? Okay, cool. Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize. I had some trouble getting back on Zoom. I call this meeting to order. It is, let's see, 4:03. Welcome everybody on the call. I'm really happy to see your faces, your beautiful faces. And next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do we have any corrections, additions to the minutes? Yes, George, thank you.
So there were the amended minutes sent out that had my suggested change, and that was all I found. So I'll make a motion to accept the amended minutes.
Thank you, George. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second made by Sierra. Angel, can we get the approval signifying by saying aye?
Aye.
Good. Any opposition? Okay, very cool. We are now in the discussion items. The parking enforcement update. Who has that, Liz?
That will be me.
Cool.
Let me share my screen here. Okay, we are going to do a parking enforcement update. And I did want to go over a little bit of background. So we did have a parking enforcement request for proposal be published in May of 2020. We did have 2 proposals submitted from that RFP process, but they were not complete. So we did make some changes to republish the RFP, and that has been republished, and that will be closing on September 8th. As you might remember, this is for parking enforcement for 300 on-street parking spots in the downtown area. There will be a free parking trial that then turns into paid parking with a 2-hour limit. And the intent of this project is to ensure parking, especially on street in front of storefronts in the downtown area is available for customers and has regular turnover. And here is a map kind of signifying where those on-street parking spots would be. And our next steps, we are going to have the discussion today with the Downtown Parking Committee, so you can give us some input as to previous conversations that you've had about parking enforcement, as well as any guidance going forward. Again, that RFP is going to be closing on September 8th, and then we will be reviewing it through the SAC process. We do have representatives on the panel from Public Works, Codes Enforcement, and the Police Department. We are going to have a successful proposal. I'm being very positive about this. And then that contract will be brought to council for approval. An important part of this, I believe, is going to be the marketing campaign and the educating, the public on these changes, and then the implementation process. And with that, let's open up the discussion.
Thank you, Liz. I was having trouble with my button again there on mute. Appreciate the presentation. Any feedback? Any issues, concerns? Sorry, looking through my, seeing none, Liz. Are you asking us just to have, you're giving us an update and anything else?
If there's any previous concerns that had come up in the past or any suggestions going forward, especially with the marketing or educational components, once it is, we do have that proposal in place.
Very cool, thank you. I see George Pearson has a question. Sierra on deck.
So we won't know what the system is until the RFP process is completed, and you'll also do the contract and bring to city council. So is that, or explain to us exactly the process, I guess, as to when we'll know what system will be around.
That is correct. So we will not know the specific system until the proposals are submitted and reviewed. And then after that, if there is a proposal that meets all of the requirements, we would enter into a contract that would have to be approved by city council.
Liz, are you?
I'm sorry. I can't find out my hand signal on this thing. But can you tell me
Hold
why
on, George.
we can't know what the system is, what the system might be?
So before we get to that, I would ask that you announce yourself for the minutes, because it is being recorded, and I don't know if we have, Danya might be taking minutes. And so we need to have you announce yourself, please, first and last name. If you are on Zoom under the participants, it just makes it much easier. Hit the participants tab, and you will, icon will pop up with all the participants, and raise your hand is there to your right. It makes it easier if you can do that. And so go ahead, Liz and or Dr. Martinez.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Parking Committee, this is Griselda Martinez for the record. So the city, we need to follow, because of the amount of the procurement, we need to follow our procurement code and the process defined by it. And so for this instance, we need to go through the selection advisory committee. We abbreviated as SAC. And so that follows, the SAC committee was put together to review the RFP that has been published that Liz mentioned. Once the closing date for the RFP to be published, it ends, the proposals come back to SAC for the committee to review and evaluate. Once that evaluation takes place and at least one respondent meets all the requirements, the next step is for the negotiation of the contract. Because of the, as you may recall, before we published the RFP, we published a request for information, and the systems were very broad on what they, what companies could provide. It was just the traditional parking, not coins anymore, but the ones that are every 2 spaces, and there were also the centralized options. So unfortunately, because it is based on what the market can offer, based on the requirements that were defined in the RFP, we will not know what options we have until we close that open window of publication. We can, during the contract negotiation, we cannot provide an update, but we can provide a summary of the options after a vendor is selected. Does that make sense?
It does. George, any other?
I'm good.
Okay. Sierra?
Sierra Angel, for the record, I just wanted to ask what the marketing and education was going to be, if you knew how you were going to do that already, or wait until you see what system we're going to be using. Just kind of curious about that.
Liz Vega for the record here. So that is definitely a conversation that we would have with the selected vendor as to the best practices for marketing. But we would ask for input, especially from this committee, because you'll be the people from the community that will be able to weigh in on those marketing strategies that we think would work the best.
I'm just curious if with any of those contracts with the people that we do have, if they provide any marketing that comes along with using their stuff, so that there's some kind of cost that's saved to the city.
It's this is Liz Vega again for the record. It is not specifically outlined in the RFP, but it is something that we will probably see in some of the proposals that are offered to us, because we are doing that transition from the free parking to the paid parking. That's just going to be a part of the process.
Awesome. Sarah Angel for the record, one thing, I'm just assuming that they've probably done this more times than we have, and they might know some more than us. So I was just curious if we were going to take advantage of that for sure.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Mike?
Looks like they've dropped.
Oh. Okay. Yep, you're right. Looking through. I do have a question. Are you allowed to talk about the elements or what the requirements were as staff put together the RFP? What elements those might be specifically related to what you were looking for?
Liz Vega for the record. That's a great question. I'm actually going to defer it to Dr. Martinez because since it has been published, I don't know if we can discuss it.
Madam Chair, because it has been published, it is actually a public document. Any company who could offer the services can access that. So we will be happy to send the link to the RFP, which includes all the different elements that were included. A big element to the discussion was the security linked to the system, and so that's where the major change was between the two documents that have been published. We defined that some of the questions that have been included in the first round could be clarified during contract negotiation instead of putting a bigger burden at the initial stage for companies to respond. But we can definitely send that information via email to you all for your reference.
I appreciate that. I think that would be really helpful. Sarah, do you have a question? Your hand is raised.
No, I just didn't take it off.
Okay, cool. No worries. I see Mike and Ms. Pollard are back on. Any questions, Mike? I'm sorry I had to interrupt you, but any questions to this?
No, not at this time, not till we know what the system is.
Right, I think the link is going to be sent to us so we have an understanding of what staff put together, I think. And then I think we're having a hard time without giving information or feedback to staff about this. I think this is a bit challenging in my mind, but I I think we have to be concerned with procurement and making sure we follow that. And so I like the idea of the link being shared with the rest of the committee so we have an understanding of what was being asked. Any other feedback? Liz, is that good? We good?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, we are good on that one.
Very cool. Okay, next is the bike rack update. Yay.
And that will also be me. So let me share my presentation with you. So this is going to be on downtown bike racks, and we kept the title vague because we were unaware if we would be able to release publicly that we received a grant for this. So we are able to do that today, so we'll talk about that. But I did want to show you a couple of the examples of the bike racks that are currently downtown. So we do have these single loops that are in front of some storefronts. We also have multiple loops. And then you can see in the right corner, in some of the callecitas, we have these very colorful loops. And for each loop, it's usually, you can fit 2 bikes securely onto those loops. So for a bit of background, we did add additional bike racks downtown when we were doing the Main Street and Callecita renovations. I went and counted today. So this is a approximation, but I believe that I caught them all. On Main Street and in the Callecitas, our current bike parking capacity, we have 29 loops, which if you multiply it by 2 is 58 parking spots for bikes. This does not include one that I will show you in just a minute. Some other background information that I looked at for this specific presentation was the 2018 Active Transportation Plan, which does discuss bike parking. And I'll show you a little snippet of that in a second here. And then we are pleased to announce that Downtown Las Cruces Partnership has applied for the ARP grant again, the community, their community funding grant. And previous applications had been for additional bike racks. They had not been successful, but the 2020 application was, and it includes funding for 8 additional bike racks and also some shade sales, but that is not relevant to this conversation today. So this is a snippet from the Las Cruces Active Transportation Plan from 2018. And you can see one of the actions is to develop a comprehensive bicycle parking policy. And this is just to, the little explanation here is kind of gives guidance for a development and how many bike racks and parking supplies should be available, especially when we're doing renovations to different areas. This is an example of an illegal bike rack that is currently at Little Toad. We, of course, we encourage bike parking downtown. So there is an understanding with the city that this is a temporary solution to the problem, but this is a potential location for one of our new bike racks downtown. So I just wanted to show everyone that. And then our next steps for this would definitely be to identify ideal locations for new bike racks. I actually walked downtown with 2 members of this committee, Mr. George Pearson and Ms. Tiffany Thompson in her role as a farmers market manager, to discuss locations, especially on Main Street, that would benefit from new bike racks. We would then coordinate the installation with Public Works. And then also a part of the grant application was to develop the educational component because we want people to use these bike racks once they're in place. So having programming around safe riding practices, potentially organizing some group rides. And again, this would be through the downtown partnership. And then potentially doing some park and shop dining marketing. So encouraging people to ride their bikes downtown and stay for a few hours and either eat dinner or shop in some of the retail shops that are downtown. The grant funds have to be expended by December 31st. So this is a quick turnaround. And then after this project specifically is completed, we would work with the active transportation coordinator once that person is hired by the city to develop that bike parking policy. And I'm hoping that we could have downtown be the pilot program for any sort of policy that is created. And with that, I'd love to hear your comments on either locations that we could put the bike racks or any sort of comments on what you've seen today.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate that. Very exciting. Really love that you involved George and Tiffany, two people I think that have an immense amount of knowledge and experience. And I love the way we tied it into the active transportation and the ADLCP for getting the grant. I think that's awesome. Anybody have any questions, concerns? Yes, Anthony.
Anthony Renio, Public Works. I just wanted to mention that the count of bicycle parkings on those single loops, that's actually 3 parking, not 2, because you actually can park one between the pipes and then one on either side. So the industry standard, that is a 3 parking bike. And if you have a double loop, that's actually a 5 parking. So just for clarification.
Oh, wow. Anthony, thank you. That really changes that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we had the correct numbers on what we're doing and our counts. For
Okay.
downtown.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that. George.
Okay, so on that, I've never heard that. I don't understand how you get 3 on the 2 on one loop. The loops are designed for 2 points of contact. And in our zoning code, we're very explicit that bike racks need to have 2 points of contact for the bicycle. So they would lean up against the loop. And so you only have room for 2 bikes on each of the loops. And that's what the design standard is from the manufacturer as far as I know.
Anthony, with that?
Yeah, well, again, the intended, when they say 2 points of contact, you're parking the bike alongside the, I know where you're coming from, where 2 points of like front of the bike, back of the bike, but it's actually, you can lock upper part of the frame, lower part of the frame, or a tire, depending on how you park up against it. But they're truly designed, if you go to, if you just type in bike racks on the internet, you'll see any of those manufacturers, a single loop of that nature is truly designed outside, 1 bike in the center and 1 on the outside. And so that's how the manufacturers get the 3 count. And like say, again, a double loop will have a 5 count because there's 3 openings and the 2 outside spaces. And so that's what just the industry standards counts.
I guess you're gonna have to bring 3 bikes to one of those loops and show me. Part of the discussion that we've had, isn't maybe not directly related to what we're doing here, is bike parking around the downtown plaza area, in the stage area. Currently, the only bike parking is kind of hidden off to the side. So as it was just brought up during my discussion with Liz as we were doing the tour. On the active transportation coordinator, I have a little bit of information on that. The city has been unsuccessful in hiring for that position, and they're going back and reworking the job description. This was about 3 weeks ago when I heard this discussion. I haven't seen the new job description or the new posting out yet. So that's supposed to happen by the end of the month. And then you've probably got a 3-month hiring process. So I wouldn't expect the active transportation coordinator to be available until the first of the year at this point.
Thanks, George. I was going to ask or comment on those 2 items. I think that's really important. So as you were, so Liz and George and Tiffany, as you all were sort of conducting your tours and whatnot, were you able to identify spots that would be conducive to placing these bike racks in in particular spots? Because I know that the one behind the plazas, no one uses them, I guess. And I think it concerns safety, you know, those kinds of things. So
This is Liz Vega. So yes, we did actually walk through and notice some areas that would benefit from bike racks. Directly in front of Zia Comics, and then also on the side of Little Toad Creek, there's some space that would allow for bike rack loops, but not impede the farmers market on Saturday. Again, these would be conversations we would have with the storefronts themselves to make sure that this is something that they're amenable to as well. And then also on the other side of the Boneyard, the new ice box downtown, there's some space there that would be available for these bike racks, as well as in front of Coas Books. So something that we talked about, Mr. Pearson and I, and Tiffany as well, is that depending on what side the bike rack is on, it makes for convenience for the user. So having some on both sides, there's actually some more on the east side than the west side. So having those in front of Coas would actually put some in a place that they don't have any right now.
very good. So you did a bit of an assessment, a survey, and identified spots. And so will you be moving the racks behind the plaza to another location or keeping them there? Is there any dialogue around that?
Liz Vega for the record. I believe those are pretty permanent in that location. I'll double check with Public Works to see if there is a possibility of moving it, because like we've heard from multiple people, they aren't used as much because of their current location. Another spot that we did identify was on the north end of the plaza near the electrical car plugs. There's some space there that is in the shade and could maybe support one or two bike racks. And that way too, when there are events on the plaza and it's potentially fenced in, they would still be on the outside of the event. So you're not locked into to going to that specific event, but still have access to the businesses across the street.
Great, Liz. Can you help mitigate whatever concerns or the specific concerns about the number of bikes that fit in that rack and all of the racks? And I understand it's an industry standard, and I feel there's a little bit of conflict about how many can actually fit. And could you help us along, because that really adds, if that's the case, it really adds to the number, right, that we do have. And so like some clarification on that, Liz, if we can.
Liz Vega, definitely will set up some conversations with Public Works and with the bike community to make sure that we have what works for our downtown.
Perfect, great. Anything else around biking? Tiffany? Yes, George.
So one of the bullet items you had was education. I just want to make sure that when you talk about education, and I'm not sure exactly what you wanted to talk about, but I am a league cycling instructor. There are a small number of us, and we're qualified to teach the league's curriculum, which has more to do with cycling in the road as traffic. But just so I want to make you aware that you do have a resource available.
Liz Vega, for the record, we would definitely be pulling on your educational resources. And part of the grant application was to encourage people to come downtown and use the bike racks. And I think in the application, we actually put that we wanted to do those safe riding courses. So even if it's like a few weeks of meeting at a certain time, going through all of the safe riding practices in the downtown area, I think that's something that we can pull from your expertise.
This is George again. That's something as cycling instructors, we can have very flexible curriculum. We just have to cover certain must-knows. So we can structure from an hour or 2-hour course, half an hour, to the full traffic safety 101 course is a 10-hour course. So there's a lot of flexibility in there. So I'm sure we could work something out and help you with that.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any.
I think Mike has his
Sorry,
hand
Liz.
up.
I'm sorry,
I believe that
Mike did.
Go ahead, Heather.
I didn't see it. I'm so sorry, Mike.
Oh, it's me, it's Heather.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Miss you all so much.
Yes.
How much was the grant, and was that from the Community Foundation? I was having trouble hearing.
Absolutely. So the grant was, this is Liz Vega for the record. The grant was through AARP,
AARP.
their community grant funding process that they have every year. And we received $12,000. And so that will be paying for 8 new bike racks as well as some shade sales.
Great. And who wrote the grant, Liz?
It was through Downtown Las Cruces Partnership, and I did assist a little bit on that grant as my position in Arts and Cultural District, because we did write it from the Arts and Cultural District perspective.
Great. Thank you.
Liz, since you brought it up, Arts and Cultural District, would we be able to have some art placed on there? Not only colorful, but maybe some other artistic impressions? That would be so cool. I know there's some really neat, awesome examples out there.
This is Liz Vega. Definitely will be a part of the discussion because, and I was looking at the bike code, and it does allow for some artistic or design expression with the bike racks, as long as they're meeting those 2-point standards that Mr. Pearson was talking about. Again, this will be a conversation that we have with our Public Works Department, and then to see how much each one of those more artistic bike racks may cost. We definitely want to make sure we have those 8 that we promised, but we will definitely look at least signage. So we want to make sure that they know that it is downtown and it is the Arts and Cultural District. So putting the logo on those bike racks is something we'll be looking into.
Very cool. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions or concerns. Liz, did we fulfill our obligation as the committee to, in terms of updates and providing guidance?
Absolutely. And just going forward, you can see in the agenda future discussions listed there. So that's all for today.
That's cool. Okay. And I usually also reach out to the committee members asking for any other future discussion points that that you might have moving forward. If there is, this is a time to speak to that. Okay, seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry.
This is George. Just maybe if we need further discussion of the bike parking at a future meeting, have it as an agenda item so we can talk about it, even if there's something to be done there.
That's good. That's good, George. I appreciate that. Also maybe an update to the meters, whatever that looks like. Do you think we would have some additional information by the time we meet, Liz, in September? Or is that, I forgot the time frame. I think we're right. I'm looking at the dates. Will we have some information or probably not, right?
This is Liz Vega. For the next meeting, we may not have an update on the parking enforcement, just given the process for review, but definitely would keep it for future discussion at the October meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz. Okay, George, you have another question?
You're ready to have a motion to adjourn, so I'm getting ready to do
Oh,
that.
thank you.
So I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion made by George Pearson. Do I have a second?
Sierra Angel, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we are adjourned. You guys have a great evening and I will see you next month. Thank you all. Appreciate it.